Now that the dust has settled on MVP MMA's first offering on Netflix, let's have a look and see what value this promotion actually adds to the MMA landscape. To do so, we're going to look at a business model canvas, which is a one-page visual guide to describe, analyze, look at how a business offers value to the customer. I've already looked at a business framework in relation to UFC using the diffusion of innovation theory. I had a nice little chart set up for you. That video did pretty well for this channel. But now we're going to look at the business model canvas. And this is used by big businesses, startups, entrepreneurs. If you're wondering my credentials, you're listening to a first-class honours student from business school, okay? Just saying. I'll explain the business model canvas as we go, but just before we begin here, this might not look like your typical business model canvas because I'm going to include what UFC is currently doing and currently what they're doing poorly to look at what MVP can do instead to in turn be successful. So I know that we described this at the start as being what value do they add. This business model canvas here has been done under the illusion that MVP wants to be successful and there's going to be a second card. So all of this could be rendered completely pointless if there is no MVP MMA on Netflix number 2. But without further ado, let's get going. First of all, going to look at the actual value proposition. So what is it that MVP are offering? What problem do they solve? What value do they provide? Now, first of all, let's look at what UFC currently is, what they're doing. Currently holding a monopoly in the world of MMA. They'll try and tell you otherwise. It's simply not true. Next up, fighter pay, always a hot button issue, and that has then in turn caused big fights to be missed. This was particularly apparent after the White House card was announced. We missed out on Ilya versus Islam, Poatan versus John Jones, to name a couple. There are many others. They passed up on Ronda versus Gina, which, say what you want about that fight, it's a massive fight. And also Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor, they couldn't get it over the line. And then it all comes to light that it's over the fact that they don't want to pay for it. Say what you want, UFC offered Nate Diaz more money than MVP. He just declined the fight. People only have so much resolve, right? You can offer people enough money to do basically anything. And that includes taking part in the biggest trilogy in MMA history. Next up, lackluster promo. If you're satisfied with a weigh-in, a ceremonial weigh-in, and a press conference the night before where we asked the terrible MMA media to ask terrible questions, and then Dana White pretends not to hear them, am I right, Miami? And on top of all that, whilst holding a monopoly, there is no competition, there is nowhere else to go, and as a result, we don't really need to give people the big fights because they're not going anywhere else. We don't need to run promo because the people who are going to watch anyway. And then finally, of course, what we have is overexposure, and not overexposure to the good stuff, not overexposure to the promotional propaganda or promotional events, what have you, but overexposure in terms of we need to have fight night cards every single week. And when we can't find a city to host our fight nights, we just throw them in the Apex. You know that building, the same one that runs Aiden Ross's brand risk events? No, seriously, we persist with the Apex even though fighters and fans don't like it, but it's just what we do. And of course, see these weekly fight nights, what it does is it eats up a decent main event, a decent fight that you could put on an actual card that people care about. But instead, we stretch the roster so thin, it just makes these cards that have no interest from a wider fan base other than hardcores. So what can MVP actually offer in terms of value? Competition, of course, to the monopoly of the UFC. This is beneficial to both the fighters who don't want to work for UFC or who just get blacklisted. Mohamed Makayev, welcome to MVP. Saladin Pernas, you don't want to work for UFC? Welcome to MVP. But for actual fans who don't want to watch these shit fight night cards that get put together, we can offer an MVP card with some real promotion. In the lead up to the first card on Netflix, you could not escape Ronda Rousey, and to a lesser extent, but also Gina Carano, between the sit-down face-offs, the multiple press conferences they held, the open workouts. Real promo run in the lead up to the main event, the triple header main event to be more precise. But next up, of course, part-time schedule. You cannot overexpose. Nothing damages your product more than overexposure. And there's a difference between large volume and overexposure, where we're just beating you over the head with, again, shit fight night cards in the Apex. And I don't want to hear this, Dana White. You can't tell me what is and what is not a bad card until it happens. I can look at some of these lineups and tell you this ain't good. This ain't good, kid. But next up, big money fights. Big money fights. Big money just seemed like the easiest phrase to use here to describe what I'm talking about and still sound interesting, but it's literally just interesting fights. And what we do is we stack them all on top of one card. We start with the sort of freak show spectacle, Ronda, Gina, Diaz and Perry, also a big money fight to a different audience. And Francis Ngannou, big name, big money fights. And we put them all on the same card. It's a little round the elbow to get to the wrist, but what we provide in terms of value is a safe haven. Come and seek refuge and salvation at MVP competition against the UFC. We offer real promotion for cards. And sporadically, we're not beating you over the head with these terrible cards. Once every so often, we are going to stack multiple big money fights one on top of the other and give you a crazy looking card. With actual fights you want to see, cough cough, Bo Nickel Dawkins, cough cough, Huffy Chandler, cough cough, O'Malley Zahabi. Who even wanted Ilya versus Islam? Who even wanted Pereira versus Jones? Where is Yair Rodriguez? He's been replaced with Steve Garcia. So that is our initial value proposition. We're going to offer quarterly-ish, hopefully quarterly-ish fight cards where we stack them full of either big names, sort of freak show spectacles, interesting fights to combat the sort of monotonous, we know this fight will be very boring, but they are close in the rankings, so we kind of need to make it, that kind of thing. All the while, we're going to promote this like we actually care and try to build some sort of hype. And of course, what I missed out here was the ease of access through the Netflix partnership, but we will get to that soon enough. Next, we're going to move over to customer segments. Now, yes, I can already hear the howls of derision from the back benches, but like it or not, UFC is for the hardcore fan base, and I say that as in, see if you're really excited, interested in the card this weekend, Song Yadong, Davison Figueiredo, or you watched Mallet versus Burns, or you're going to watch Bilal Muhammad versus Gabriel Bonfirm, you're a hardcore. You are so invested in this shit because, trust me, nobody else is watching this. I don't think that these are horrendous fights on their own, but the fact that they are being trusted to hold an event and build an event off of that, I mean, these fights would be so much better served on an actual card, basically. And Figgy and Bilal were champions and still no one cares about these cards and the fact that they're main eventing. But what I mean is UFC has the hardcore fan base on lock. It's because that's where you're going to find the best fighters. And typically hardcore fans don't enjoy the freak show spectacle aspect of the sport. They want, the best must fight the best. And part of me agrees with that. When you get to a certain point in the rankings, we need to see the top 5 guys fight the top 5 guys instead of, what will be a fun matchup. Like it or not, believe it or not, UFC is the promotion which does serve the hardcore fan base who love MMA as a pure sport. But that's not where MVP is going to succeed. That's not where they're going to find the success. We'll get to that in 1 second. But UFC also has a lot of fan turnover. I spoke about this on the diffusion of innovation theory, that the people who were here before aren't really here now. The fan base, the people watching, has undergone transformations over the years. And UFC doesn't really shy away from that. This is why they pay Nina Drama to do what Nina Drama does, or Aiden Ross, or the Nelk Boys. They're just interested in a different kind of fan now. The brain rot fan. And I'm not even saying you can't appeal to a younger audience and you shouldn't opt to appeal to a younger audience. But an actual invested audience is different from someone who just, watches a video. There's a difference between an invested fan and just a view. You know what I mean? A metric. Big numbers doesn't necessarily mean people are invested. Dana White can point to numbers all he wants about, this is the biggest this and this is the biggest that. This is why interest is at an all-time low, even if the numbers are the highest they've ever been. your ability to sell ads based on the number of views that this knockout got is not indicative of an actual product that people are invested in. But as the methods of promotion have changed, as the fighters have changed, so too has the fan base. Insert 100 Caucasus region fighters and also insert millions and millions of Russian bots who enjoy trolling, calling fights robberies that they did not watch, or even really know the rules because the scores are based on damage and not control. I digress. But next up, I've got boring matchups written down. Now, I don't mean literal boring matchups of, 15-minute guard sessions, even although we are prone to some stinkers here and there. But by boring matchups, I just sort of mean willingness from the audience to watch a boring matchup, because the hardcore fans are there and will always be there, again, because they are the monopoly. There is nowhere else to go. The casuals will change, that is the fan turnover, but the hardcores will stay, and they have a willingness to watch the more boring matchups. But the last point here from UFC in terms of their customer segment is the extra right-wing skew that the sport has taken. And I'm sad that it's the whole sport that's taken this direction as opposed to UFC, the company itself. As we talk about here, UFC is the sport, basically. PFL is just non-existent, one championship. Bellator's gone, Strikeforce, all these places are just gone. It's UFC, it's their way or the highway. And that's the segment that they've chosen to appeal to. And I know that Luke Thomas gets some flack for calling MMA a right-wing sport. It's kind of, you can't argue it whatsoever. And this is where MVP doesn't, I say, cover itself in glory. Take whatever political opinion you want. But Jake Paul being at the Trump rally in Kentucky, it's being endorsed for political office. I suppose it's going to help you get the UFC fan in the door, but part of this has to be to keep politics out of it. That has contributed, whether you like it or not, heavily to the fan turnover, because it never used to be like this. It didn't. But now you have Trump sitting cage side with Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and all these guys. Like, that can't be a thing. And also, while we're here, Jake Paul, you should probably ditch the imperial box thing that you have going on as though you're the emperor at the Colosseum. I would probably stop doing that. I think it just rubs people up the wrong way for literally no reason. Let's get on to the audience that you actually now need to target, and that is the casual fan base. You need big names, you need freak show spectacles, you need interest and hype, whilst also having nostalgia. Junior Dos Santos getting sparked out cold by Robelis Despan, great choice. Absolutely great choice. Because this is where we also have to dip into the UFC market of, the fan turnover, the Nina drama watcher, the whatever, the brain rot style of fight. That Robelis Despan Junior Dos Santos fight that could be made into a TikTok clip, shit like that. And also, finally, no politics, please. I'm so bored of it. And it's more prominent and in your face than ever before, everybody's political opinion about nonsense. Just stop. Just keep it out. Tell everybody, have your own political opinion. You don't need to agree with mine. Ideal. Just don't throw yours in everybody's face. How about that? The actual market that we're appealing to, just to cap off here, is the casual MMA fan, probably of years gone by, that knows Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano, that knows Junior Dos Santos, and still has an interest. They know who Francis Ngannou is. He's been part of big boxing events since. He's the lineal UFC heavyweight champion still. We're also going to try and do a better job of keeping our political views hidden. And what we're also going to do is supplement these big names, these nostalgia names, with the best of the unsigned talent from outside the UFC. Come on in, Saladin Parnasse. Go and beat this guy up for us. Thank you. I seen Rico Verhoeven nearly beat Alexander Usyk. Right, we know he wants to fight MMA, or he has been offered to fight MMA in the past. I bet the MVP can put together a much more favourable deal, a much better package to come in, even if it's for 2 shots. Come on in, have a one-sided beatdown. That'll make it all over TikTok. I don't think it's his first fight. He's had one fight before. Sadly, you can't bill it as Rico Verhoeven's MMA debut. but it basically is. It's his first MMA fight in over 10 years. So, I mean, it's just about as good as his first MMA fight. You have him come in, one-sided beatdown, that makes it all over the place. Then you throw him in there with Francis Ngannou, right? And then he can go back and he can do boxing or whatever he wants. The last guy to beat Alex Pereira, I see he's training with Cyril Gane for that fight at the White House. Have him come in, kill somebody in a TikTok clip. You know, I mean, see, because we're tailoring this to the casual fan base, in the promo run, we can bill this as whatever we want to. That is the beauty of this. But moving on, right, that's our customer segments. The nostalgic fan, the casual who just wants, or I shouldn't say just wants, but favours entertainment and spectacle over, you know, technical skill, and who also does not want to hear or be bombarded with politics. Next, channels. Now, look, Netflix, Paramount here, right, UFC on Paramount. This is where MVP has a major, major advantage over UFC and is actually critical to the success. See, of all these boxes on the screen, channels, this is the biggest thing that this literally decides whether MVP is going to be a success or not. It's distribution and it being on Netflix to that many people. Beyond the value proposition, beyond the customer segments, like no differentiation of your product compared to UFC, what we see on the screen, how that differs from UFC or the segment of the audience that we're trying to target, the ease of access that you have to Netflix, it is so pivotal to the success. MVP MMA number one, the main event. Good grief, sorry. 17 million concurrent viewers for the main event. Is that what I seen? That wasn't 17 million viewers total. That was like, it peaked at 17 million viewers for the 17-second main event. Put that exact same card on anything else, any other platform, it does not do nearly that number. Put it on free for YouTube, it's not the same as being on Netflix. People use Netflix like they used to use TV. That's just the automatic thing that goes on. And the fact that it's on the it's on the title page, the first thing you click on when you sign into your account, and it's the first thing you see, people are going to put it on. So, and I've got it written all here in capitals, this and the actual appealing to casuals, these are the biggest things critical to the success of MVP. Ease of access through Netflix and appealing to the casual audience by throwing big names on these sporadic cards. This is the value proposition here. Big names, sporadic cards, not overexposing it, ease of access through Netflix, targeting the casual audience, the nostalgic audience who's left UFC, who's annoyed at UFC, who are looking for something else. They turn on Netflix and this is what they get. So next up, we're going to customer relationships, and we need to talk about UFC and how it treats its audience. I find it rich that the Monopoly man tells us don't like it, don't watch, knowing fine well that there's no other option for an MMA fan. Who the fuck is going to watch PFL? Of all the Mighty Mouse podcasts that I've watched, it's more often than not a fan saying UFC used to be better. I liked UFC before, I don't like it now. He then asked, or, you know, I'm unsatisfied with what UFC's given me. He asked them, do you watch One Championship? And they say no. Because it's a literal monopoly. People, this is nostalgia. People like the name brand. They like what they're used to. They like seeing the biggest fighters, either that being the best or the names that we're referring to, fight each other. That's what people would like to see. They don't want to be bombarded with all this other stuff. They want actual promo. They don't want these cards being stretched in every single week. They don't want the politics to be involved. Dana White tells you, you don't like this, don't watch it, knowing fine well there's nowhere else to go. He looks you in the eyes, he takes your money, says fuck you, we'll see you next week. And this takes us on to part 2 and 3 of this three-headed Cerberus, Rogan and DC on commentary, again highlighted in all caps. Genuinely, if not number one, top 3 worst things about UFC right now is the commentary. Sorry, fact. Absolutely 100% true. Numbered card commentary in America when Rogan is there next to DC, Jesus Christ. Genuine hanging from the ceiling fan territory. or, just put it on mute, whatever one works. I opt for the latter, that one works for me, but I totally understand if you take the first option as well. This is where I specifically get the most annoyed, right? DC on commentary, literally eating either the microphone or eating popcorn on the microphone whilst also speaking is just egregious. But what really gets me is Joe Rogan sitting there, right? Turns up to one card a month, and the people in the building get a shit main event, i.e. Islam JDM, i.e. Hamzat DDP, i.e. Oliveira versus Holloway, right? All three examples. Like, he then starts specifically attacking fans in the arena for booing that. This takes us on to ticket prices. You spent literally thousands of pounds to be there. You spent thousands of pounds to be there. That's what you get delivered for the big main event, because these cards have turned into boxing cards where it's only one fight. That's all that people are really interested in, with any stakes involved. Because fights on pay-per-view cards, sometimes they don't even have ranked guys on them. So you've paid all that money, you've turned up to a title fight, or in the case of Holloway and Oliveira, a BMF fight, it is what it is, but you're expecting some fireworks there and you don't get it. And then Joe Rogan attacks you for booing, says that you're clueless, you know nothing, and he says the word casual. Somebody needs to take it out of his vocabulary, because he says it with such disdain and contempt for the fans that it's really disrespectful how he talks about it. I'm using casuals here, and I've got it highlighted on the right side of the screen. When I say casuals, I mean people who aren't interested in the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts of how everything works. The people who just want to see two guys go out there, stand and bang, and they value entertainment. You're not a casual, and you're not subhuman for booing when someone just gets ground control and starts racking up control time. I hate UFC commentary more than anything. The ticket prices, again, are another factor, because Joe Rogan's telling you, you've spent all your time, you've spent all your money to be here, you can't actually tell us how you feel, you just need to appreciate the nothing that's happening in the cage right now. Everybody at home watching, you're an idiot if you don't like this, you're an idiot if you don't understand the intricacies of what's going on. We actually hate you, but thank you for watching. Just nuke commentary now. We need different voices in there. Put Anik and DC and Rogan. Go and take them to your little podcast studio in fucking Texas somewhere, wherever the fuck, and do a fight companion there and talk about, the intricacies of stand-up comedy. Go and do that there. Get off of commentary. Anyway, MVP, I like Mauro Ranallo. I like Kenny Florian as well. I would rather Bash Rutten and Stephen Quadros though. For those who watch the Pride reviews, thank you. But shout out to those two. I don't know what they're doing right now. But Mauro Ranallo has been around for a long time. He done Strikeforce stuff. He done stuff in Pride. I would love Bash Rutten on one show. I really would. Next to Mauro Ranallo would be an ideal pairing, but I don't mind Kenny Florian either. He is pretty good too. But yeah, what they need to do the opposite of this, right? Don't like it, don't watch, is just about the worst thing to say to your fans, because they will just stop watching, and this is contributing to the fan turnover. You're already pissing people off, and then you tell them, yeah, you don't like it, just fuck off. We already got the money from Paramount. It doesn't matter what you think. MVP needs to cater more towards the fan and not treat them like dirt, basically. Commentary is pretty good. The ticket prices, I get that that's just the age that we're in. Everything is going to be expensive, particularly events like this where the fighters on the card are getting paid and we're in the Intuit Dome, right? I'm presuming not a cheap arena to run. We'll get to more venue relationships later. But try and stay as far away from all this stuff in red as you possibly can. See, now that I'm writing out this business model about how MVP is going to be successful, and I'm writing down all the things about UFC that they're doing, this isn't even just, here's where UFC are like, missing the mark. This is their actual business model, and like this is what they offer. A monopoly, the big fights missed, no promo, overexposed and thinning out the cards every single week, telling the audience openly to fuck off, calling them idiots and charging them a fortune. Making this specifically a political movement used to shift elections. I cannot believe that they're making as much money as they are and the sport isn't finished. Genuinely, cannot believe it. So I am conscious of the time, so we'll try and rattle through a lot of these other segments. Now this bottom one here, revenue streams for the actual companies are pretty self-explanatory, if I can speak English. The revenue from Paramount sponsors, the actual gate itself is the same between both UFC and MVP. The only difference here really is that Paramount is different from Netflix, and Netflix is more than likely going to be a per event deal, whereas Paramount's lined up to be year by year. They get $1.1 billion. Again, I don't know how Dana White is the greatest scammer of all time. But where the actual differences come in, and I know that this is a business model about MVP itself, but the key component here is the actual fighters. Because we've seen on that first card, we've returned to sponsors on the shorts. And that is going to be effective when it comes to the actual cost structure, where fighters now aren't solely reliant on, their Venom gear bonus. Here you walk out in Venom gear, you get 50k or however much money it is. You now will get paid a decent chunk. You'll get paid a pretty penny off of MVP, but you also get your shorts to put on whatever sponsors you can, and that way you make up a lot of the difference that the sort of higher bracket pay of MMA fighters in UFC will get. It obviously won't be the same money. I'm not saying that you can be a jobber on the first match on the card and all of a sudden end up with Alex Pereira pay, but it bridges the gap between the jobbers and the sort of mid-ranked guys in UFC, because I can now flood the shorts with sponsors. I can literally be walking ad revenue, and I can actually, get paid, because big sponsors are going to want to be on my shorts, provided I don't get sparked out cold in a minute. And even if I do get sparked out cold, they're not going to care. See, if the camera zooms in on me and I have Monster Energy written on my corpse in the middle of the mat after I get KO'd in 2 minutes, I mean, they don't care. It's still, eyes on the product. So I think that's very beneficial to the revenue streams in terms of the fighter. Now, I know it's a business model based on MVP, but I think it had to be mentioned that this is a great thing for fighters. And again, taps into that nostalgia, because this is how it used to be. Fans now tune in and they see, oh, those are the old shorts they used to have before. It was just, Venom. So let us close out this green section looking at cost structure, again, similar to the revenue streams. UFC and MVP basically kind of need to pay for the same things given they're in the same field. UFC, although their contracts will be structured differently because, it's 5 fight deals or it's 3 fight deals, 10 and 10s, whereas these are more than likely just one-off events. We're not signing Saladin Pernas to multiple events per year, because we don't yet know if we are running a second one. Again, fingers crossed, hopefully. But other expenses obviously come with the venue. We're going to talk about that a little more when it comes to partnerships at the end, which is interesting. But the cost structure, the key point I want to highlight here, the production value. The production value for MVP was really good. Please keep that as close to you, as close as you possibly can from the first one to the second one. It was great. If it becomes more expensive, again, ditch the Imperial box. I can't believe you had an Imperial box at your own event. I can believe it because it's Jake Paul, but you would get those interludes where it's just him and his wife standing there, and it's so weird. Just don't. Even Dana doesn't do that. He's never done that. He'll set cage sides, but then again, he's the president of the thing, and he's talking to the production truck. You're literally just sitting there on camera the whole time. Please stop. It is funny, but please stop. Actually, another note on commentary. Dana White is sitting there cage side watching the TV because he cares about the viewing experience at home. I will give him that. He's watching that TV to talk to the production team, right? He's got the red phone, whatever, right? Funny, haha, the bat phone. Good one. You watch commentary, right? You look to the side of the cage and you see the three-headed Cerberus of commentary, and they're not watching the TV. They're looking at the fight live in front of them, so they don't know what the viewing audience at home is actually watching. So, recent example, Waldo Cortez Acosta and Alexander Volkov, they're watching live and Waldo's walking forward and swinging a whole bunch. It looks like he's doing something. The viewing audience at home can clearly see he missed every punch. Meanwhile, commentary's going, "Ow!" and acting like he's doing something, and he isn't. That's a production note. Not even touching on their various biases that we all know that they have and we know who for. But the fact that they're not watching the TV means that they're getting a different view from the TV audience at home, and that's not how commentary works. So, yeah, someone should probably tell them to stop. Some people call them the best commentary team in MMA, and it tends to be their friends, but it's still a bad message to put out there because it's so wrong, and you'll get people who believe it. It's actually quite dangerous. Just saying. So our key resources, what are the most important assets that we have? The Netflix streaming, I've already been over it. The ease of access, it is literally the biggest thing. The roster, who are the fighters? Again, tapping into that nostalgia, tapping into the entertainment value that typical casuals look for, or, people who want to be entertained, otherwise known as MMA fans. Our key resources, again, the production, the actual visuals of the event, commentary, all the rest of it. Key resources being a matchmaker too. There's potential right now for the next few cards to be really good, considering the, again, unsigned talent that's out there. Rico Verhoeven's probably going to rematch with Usyk. I really want to see him fight Francis Ngannou in MMA though, and I'm hoping that some matchmaker can put that together. Even if Verhoeven comes in 2-fight deal and his first fight isn't against Francis Ngannou, you can basically book him twice because people will still want to see him fight a nobody to start off with, and then you can bring in Francis Ngannou. That way you get 2 shots out of it instead of just, for lack of a better term, blowing the load straight away and going for Rico versus Ngannou. You can stagger that over 2 events, have Ngannou knock out Despan or somebody else. You don't need to sacrifice Despan. You could throw Junior Dos Santos back in there again. That would be a good laugh. I'm sorry, Junior. I do like you. I do. I really do. It's just, sacrifices sometimes need to be made. I'm sorry. It's just how it is sometimes. And I've thrown, as soon as I used the phrase blowing the load earlier, I thought I'd be professional and put in some sort of obvious necessities, the promo and the data from that to make sure that we're hitting the right target audience. That is the key resource to make sure that what we're doing is working. So I thought I'd add in a little bit of professionalism and maybe, something you would commonly find in a business model canvas in this business model canvas video. I swear this is real. I'm not just using it as a framework to talk about the things that I like and don't like. Next up, key activities. Sporadic events is literally the biggest one. We cannot overexpose this thing. Supply and demand and all that. You know that UFC is going to drop the ball at some point. You know they're going to put on stinker fight nights, and that is your opportunity to pounce on it. Watching old UFCs as part of the retro reviews, the Pride review will be out. Just saying, it will be soon. But UFC back in the late 90s were putting on New Year's watch parties, and I need to see one of those from MVP MMA. New Year's Eve watch party. Throw on Cain Velasquez's MMA return. That will be terrific. Which brings us on to recruitment, funnily enough. We need to get the right fighters for this audience. This prioritises entertainment value. And yes, I do want to see Makaya versus Marias. Because again, look, whilst we need to fulfill the entertainment aspect and appeal to the casual fan base, you want to hit some other bases. You want to prioritise that audience. But a Makaya versus Marias fight appeals to a different audience who will come in see the actual fun stuff at the end and think, yeah, sure, I'll come back. But they were baited in by the typical hardcore fight between Makayev and Mariah. So it's a fine line between recruitment. But I think we can also recruit. I spoke about Cain Velasquez there. I think whoever the Angola prison champion is in boxing, I think we can bail him out and bring him onto the next MVP card. Which brings us to matchmaking. Let's find him a good opponent. I don't know what their weight classes are like. But hey, look, Francis Ngannou needs a sacrifice. Or here, I tell you what, come out here and fight Rico Verhoeven. How about that? And you can imagine the build for that. Imagine him at a press conference, the Angola boxing champion. Insane. And finally, the key activity, I can't stress this enough, is the promo events, is the open workout at Venice Beach, is the multiple press conferences where Ronda Rousey just goes off on Kayla Harrison for next, I mean, who knows the reason. Savage promo though. You know, the sit down between her and Gina, again, see, even if you don't like that one, there will be one later that you do like. And that's the thing, we can't just see these one-off events and then go, oh, that one wasn't good, so we should stop doing it. No, we need to keep doing it, because more often than not, it will work and it will build hype. And I can't believe UFC just doesn't bother doing it. They do weigh-ins. They do a ceremonial weigh-in, a face-off, and people freak out if there's any fucking contact between the two fighters. Just, man, there's so much potential here. And it's not being realised because we can't be bothered, basically. It's not worth it for us to do it. It's not worth it for us to care about the fans or build hype for events, because again, the hardcores are going to watch anyway, and that's just kind of the audience for UFC right now, because there is no breakthrough mainstream star like we had 10 years ago with Ronda coming through, and then Conor just after that. We don't have that right now, so we just don't bother doing it. But see that open workout at Venice Beach, and the takeaway from it was Nate Diaz shadowboxing the cameraman while smoking the whole time. Can you imagine setting one of those up and there's actual beef between the fighters? Everybody seemed to be getting on at that press conference. Imagine that, but with some heat. It would be amazing. But look, to wrap up, we're going to look at key partnerships. We have touched on some of these. Netflix, again, of course, the biggest one. But after that, the fighters. This is where we hopefully, and I say hopefully we can see some of these same fighters on the card consistently. Hopefully they get treated right. There's no funny business with the money, none of that. We want to see Ngannou again. Some people will want to see Ronda again, myself included. She's apparently not fighting anymore, which is what it is. But then, you know, Saladin Parnasse, hopefully he comes back. Marias, hopefully he comes back. Makayev, I know there was issues with the visa, but provided that all gets sorted out, hopefully then he comes back. And people will have mixed reviews about whether they want Nate Diaz to come back, if they want to see him again. I think if we can match him up with a better opponent, I wouldn't mind seeing it again. But I totally understand if you think he should just retire. Mike Perry is definitely somebody I want to see again, and somebody I want to see for the first time alongside Rico Verhoeven. And that guy who beat Alex Pereira. See, I don't even need to know their name. I'm a kickboxing casual. And Colby Covington. Colby Covington coming in. I know he has typically a more boring style, the grappler, right, whatever. He can do a promo. So, you know, when you balance it up, weigh it out, the trade-off is worth it to bring him in. And I would have him fight Mike Perry. That's just something that I would enjoy. But of course, key partnerships, the sponsors, of course, both for fighters and for MVP. We need the money to keep this thing going. Venue operators, now I spoke about this. I didn't actually speak about this because I was saving it for key partnerships. MVP ran the Intuit Dome. I think Jake Paul already has an existing... I think he's fought in there before. Did he fight Joshua at the Intuit Dome? Am I making that up? But what I don't want to see... In fact... There's a thing, and I don't know if this is too inside or if this is a commonly known thing, but you can put an embargo on a building where if UFC, say UFC runs the Intuit Dome, they can put an embargo on that building where you cannot run an event here within 6 months before, 6 months after, so that, you know, the market, it's a monopoly tactic to basically keep competition out, and that you get a free hit at the market so that nobody gets to spend their money on MMA or a high profile MMA event that would run an Intuit Dome. But UFC could book that building and say, okay, we're coming there at the end of the year. Nobody can be in 6 months before, nobody can be in 6 months after, so the market isn't spoiled for choice, basically thinking, well, UFC's coming, but MVP's also coming in 2 months' time. I might just not go to UFC and save my money for MVP. So I'm hoping that Jake Paul has built enough relationships, or MVP, whoever his management is, with these venues so that we're not operating out of a tin can warehouse by MVP 3. Hopefully we still have these arenas. I don't need the Intuit Dome, the lights. It looks cool during the introductions. It's insanely distracting and makes the building look empty. I thought the building was empty. I thought the building was empty the whole night. Apparently it was full towards the end for the main events, but it was definitely empty at the start. So we don't want that. I can do without the smoke coming from the ceiling as well. It is a cool building. See when it lights up during the intros. It's good. I don't need it, but it is what it is. This hopefully won't be a problem if we're only running sporadic events. Hopefully there's enough time to game plan for where we're going to run, and hopefully there's enough of a UFC calendar. We typically know what months they'll be in. Australia, for example, these things are lined up well in advance. So it shouldn't be as big of a deal if they were running monthly. Even monthly, it shouldn't be a huge deal, but hopefully we can get actual good deals on the buildings, and that way we can pay bigger fighters more money and bring them for these supercards. This is, at the end of the day, that's what you want, these supercards. But next up, we have other MMA promotions, and I'd done this not thinking Saladin Parnasse had actually left KSW. So I think he has, but I put in other MMA promotions here because, and I'm only thinking of one guy, and I know nobody wants to see him, and it flies in the face of everything I've just said, appealing to the casuals, appealing to the nostalgic fan. But Usman Nurmagomedov is a PFL champion, and you can build something around the fact that he's a Nurmagomedov. I'm sorry, I said it. It's interest. Look, it's interest. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you, a Nurmagomedov on the card will sell. I don't care that we hate the fight style, because we do. We hate it. It's just one of those things. But I think he's a champion, so I don't know if PFL will want him to fight at MVP. I don't know if they can defend the belt in another promotion. I don't know what their rules are. Who cares about PFL, right? One of those things. But Usman Nurmagomedov, you can find him an opponent, is what I'm saying. And we're going to make it 3 rounds, because I'm not watching him wrestle someone to death over 5. Not happening. But we can make it 3 rounds and you can build something off the name. Just saying. And I think we need relationships with other MMA promotions to do so. That way we can pinch the top guy from here, pinch the top guy from there. And that way there's less strings attached, that Saladin Parnasse doesn't have to just leave to then be able to go and work an MVP card. Just putting that out there. And finally, of course, Netflix. The biggest thing, Netflix. And again, the biggest thing is Netflix. That is going to be the ultimate decider as to the success of this promotion, because you can have the best fights on in the world. You could put John Jones, Alex Pereira, Francis Ngannou, Tom Aspinall in a fatal 4-way Hell in a Cell match. If I can't see it, nobody's watching. If I cannot find it, then it doesn't matter who you put in there. You could put in Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 3, and if I can't find it easily, then it's not going to do the numbers that Ronda and Gina has. So, and that's a big thing. And I get these smash records for the most viewed fight, or the most viewed MMA fight, whatever. And that's great. But it doesn't happen without Netflix, and we need Netflix. Netflix is the biggest decider to the success of this promotion. I will say it until I'm blue in the face, and I almost am. That's it. That is it. That is the near end all be all, because you're not going to, without Netflix paying for the stars to appear, you're not going to be able to afford them. You're not going to be able to get them. Nobody's going to watch. There's not going to be any interest. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're not talking about what's best for the world of MMA. We're talking about the success of this promotion, and to a little extent the success of the fighters as well, who don't have to go to UFC, and the success of the fans who, when they're sick of UFC, can make their point known by running up the numbers for MVP. That's it. Because Dana White cares about numbers. Beat 17 million people. Go for it. Beat 17 million people. So that's it for this video. Like and subscribe. I have multiple playlists on the channel going through the old UFC cards, the old Pride FC cards. More retro reviews on the way soon. More modern content coming up as we approach the White House, as more fights get announced for upcoming pay-per-views. As the card this weekend in China, I might actually review a Fight Night card, which is interesting. Last one I done was Prates and JDM, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.